Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our little streaming thingy that we're doing here. We are going to be chatting today. Linda and I were talking a couple weeks ago just about the fact that there are some really common themes that we hear all the time when we're talking with people who are clients or prospective clients or more interested in the work Linda does. And so we were just talking about how powerful it could be to actually say some of the quotes, say some of the things that we hear frequently. And, it's interesting because, you hear you always hear some unicorns, right? You hear some things that are different, but there are a lot of things that are pretty darn similar that you just kind of hear as a pattern. And, one of the things that we very often hear is something to the effect of, it seems like my parents were narcissists. I didn't know what that was back then. And I seem to consistently attract spouses, life partners, friends, fill in the blank, who also have that tendency. And, you know, obviously I'm speaking in some generalities here because everybody's situation is a little different. But Linda, today I really wanted us to just take a minute, and what we're going to be talking through in the next a little while here, probably throughout the summer, is just these common questions that we get, because I think we hear this at least once a week from a prospective client.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
probably 80% of the calls I'll hear some version of that. And so I think it's really important that people understand that that they're not the only one feeling that way, and that there is, like, this is not the way it has to be for the rest of your life. So before we dive into that, though, I would love, Linda, for you to just take a moment and explain to people who you are in case they've never seen you before.
Sure. Yeah. So, welcome. If you've never seen me before, Libby and I work together, and who I am is a transformational health and whole life coach. And I've been in health and wellness for gulp over 40 years. It feels fun to say that number. But it actually has always been my passion, some level of health and wellness for my own self. Um, my father was an alcoholic. My mom died from autoimmune conditions when I was very, very young. So I always had this deep inquiry into health. What does it take to be healthy? And so that's my background. And as Libby said when she kind of introduced our talk, relationships, specifically relationships where the people that I end up working with or make a call with us, they're on the receiving end of the relationship, where they don't feel fulfilled, they don't feel listened to, they don't feel heard, they feel like they're the ones doing all the work. So that's a very common concern that we hear a lot. We also hear a lot of health, because Libby is also, it has a health background and overcame her own health issues. So we talk a lot about health, and we will again. And then the third thing would be stress and anxiety. Women who just feel overwhelmed, burned out, stressed, living in anxiety all the time. Those are the three topics I think that we connect with most often. So we're going to dive into this issue around relationships. And I want to kind of start out with, there's the traditional psychologist definition of narcissistic disorder as a personality disorder. And then there's also a spectrum of behaviors that people who would not qualify for having a disorder, but they show up in their relationships as people who are manipulative, as people who control a lot, as people who aren't really interested in hearing the other person's perspective. And so the people that we work with and tend to be on the receiving end of that. So that's what we wanted to talk about. And hold on, because my dog came back with her bone. You can hear her, right, Libby?
I can, yes. And I had to put my earbuds in because my family, it's the dinner hour and everyone's going bonkers out there. So yes, no worries. While you're moving the dog, I'm just going to chat for a second on
Okay.
that. So I think one thing I just want to say is that Linda is a coach who deals with a lot of people who deal with this particular issue, and as she said, it's not about being a psychiatrist or psychologist who is, dealing with a personality disorder necessarily. What it's really speaking to is, wow, when I hear about narcissistic people, I think of my fill in the blank, a spouse, a partner, a best friend, a parent, a child, a and what I often hear, I'm the one who's often the first person chatting with people about their journey, and what I often hear is, wow, I seem to attract these kinds of people who are very interested in themselves, who really aren't interested in me, who are just selfish or want to receive but don't really want to give. And very often they're having an awakening and recognizing that this is a pattern in their lives and realizing they don't have the tools, they're not equipped to even know how to do things differently. And oftentimes it's been their normal, right? Because very often I'll also hear, oh, well, I had a parent who was like that, or a grandparent, or both parents, or, a previous ex from another relationship. And so very often people will say, wow, I see that in myself. I see it's a pattern. I don't like it. I know I'm not equipped to do anything differently, yet I would have no idea how to begin to transform myself, change relationships. Because a lot of these people, they really love these people. They're not like, oh, I just got to get all these people out of my life. They're trying to figure out how do I interact with this now that I understand that these traits exist and maybe I'm attracting that into my life. So, that was a very long explanation, but that's really what I see, and the purpose of what I wanted to talk about here in this little discussion time was just like how frequently we hear it, and is there something you can do about it, or is it just like, oh, you just gotta like cancel all these people, get them all out of your life, shove them to the side, go live in a cocoon in a bubble. And I already know the answer to this, by the way, but I'm being a little facetious. But oftentimes we think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just like complete clean slate. But the problem is, wherever we go, there we are. So guess what we're going to attract if we even dump everybody off at the next bus stop?
Right.
So, Linda, can you talk to us a little bit about like when you have this awakening and you recognize, oh, wow, maybe I am not, maybe the people that got me here will not get me where I want to go next. How do you, or the relationships, or who you are as a person, how do you help equip people to maybe just choose a different path?
Yeah, such a great topic because it comes through. And first of all, I want to say thanks, Eric. I don't know if Eric's still listening, but he commented about the dog. He's probably a dog person. So thanks, Eric. But, you know, when we first get started, oh no, this is what I was going to say. It comes through a few different channels for us in how we wind up in relationships. So there's one channel, which is behaviorally, we're used to taking care of others a lot. We're used to shoving our needs aside and making sure other needs are filled first. We're also used to, it feels very normal, not necessarily comfortable, but normal to walk on eggshells around people. That feels normal. So when we start a new relationship and that's happening, it's kind of like, well, this is how relationships are. This is what I have to do for people. So there's the behaviors that we go to work on, like that, the people pleasing, the walking on eggshells. Then there's the neural pathways and the thinking about ourselves. Thanks, Eric. The thinking about ourselves, like, I can't get anybody different than this, or this is how all men are. I'm going to say men because typically I work with women. So I'm sure there are men, actually, I have worked with men who feel like their girlfriends were their wives, but this guy had a girlfriend. So I know it works both ways, but we primarily work with women. So this is how men are, or this is what I need to do to keep a man, or there's certain neural pathways that, which, and what I mean by that is how we think about ourselves and how we see ourselves and what we need to do. So there's the thinking part of it. And then the third piece of it is our actual nervous system response. So the nervous system's job, number one job, is to keep you feeling safe. So it's always scanning the environment, what's happening, the experiences you're having, and deciding, do I feel safe or not? And the nervous system will sacrifice good connection, good relationship for familiar. It will always sacrifice what you actually really want for what you're used to feeling. So we have to train the relationship. How does it feel to feel safe with somebody who's not making you work really hard at their needs, right? Because you may know you don't want that, but that's where home base feels like in your body. So
Yes.
you meet somebody and they're actually just easygoing. They're not manipulative. They, are agree with you or ask for your opinion, or you don't have to work on eggshells. And you find yourself like uncomfortable because it's not familiar. So those three areas, the patterns that we have in behaviors and choices, the way we think and see ourselves in the world, and then how our nervous system works. We have to go to work on all of that in order to break the patterns. But if any one of those three resonated with you, like, oh, I do often think of, what do I have to do? Or nobody else is out there. This is what I have to put up with. Or I do always want to people please. You want to recognize where in those areas are you landing right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I really want to hone in on something. I was speaking with a client last week of my own, and we were talking about how she was in an abusive relationship, at least emotionally abusive, but it felt so normal to her. And she felt like they got each other.
Mm,
And as we were talking, I just said, it's kind of like, I won't use the exact example I used with that, but I'll use a different example. But it's kind of like if you're a walker or a runner. And I've never been a big one of those all the way around, but I really started doing that with my dogs. That was one of the things I really wanted to start doing was just getting out walking more. And I started out with these old beat up running shoes that were just, they needed to go to the trash. They were not supportive. And I got some new, things to go in the shoes. Like I did the whole thing, right? And it was interesting how much I really wanted to go back to the old shoes because they felt normal and comfortable, even though they were not supporting my legs. They weren't doing a good thing for me, but it seemed very foreign and weird to be supported by these shoes, which is a weird thing. But I mean, we find that often in relationships, right? And it can be friendships, it can be parent child, it's not always romantic relationships. You can attract the same kinds of friends all the time
yeah.
that are just like, it's always about them, it's always about what they need. They don't even like say, oh, by the way, how are you? Or maybe once every 5 calls they ask how you are. That's probably not the healthiest friendship. And so, although we do all go through periods, right? But there's a natural give and take that needs to be there. But often our home base, what feels normal to us, may not be what is best for us, what is healthiest for us, what we can't always be trusting that our feelings on what's normal equals what is healthy for us. Healthy and normal are two different things. Another great example, my husband and I, when we were in the corporate wellness space, we had a patient had never been on vitamins in their life, never done anything wellness related, factory worker, and came back to us 2 weeks after they had started the supplements. And it's simple vitamins. It wasn't anything, huge. And they said, I went off it. Like I went off immediately. Like I did it for a week and I had to get off it. We're like, what, did you have an allergic reaction? Like we're all concerned what happened. They're like, no, I started feeling good and like energetic. And like I woke up feeling good and happy. And that scared me.
Mm.
Okay, so even though that was the outcome they knew they wanted, right? They came to us because they wanted more energy. Once they felt it in their body, once it showed up in their actual lives, it was scary to them because it was that unfamiliar to not wake up feeling gross.
Right. Yeah. So in the area, let's say romantic relationships, because of all relationships, your romantic life partner type relationships are going to be the most influenced by what you grew up with the
Mhm.
most, because that was the example that you saw between the people who raised you, and and it's the way you learn to attach. And attachment is, primary and key in our relationships. So our romantic relationships are a reflection of the relationships we grew up with. And so if somebody is really, they call you, they check in, they ask what you need, it feels boring. It feels like he's wishy-washy, or he's whatever. It the adrenaline of working hard is the familiar feeling, and you think that adrenaline means attraction. You think that adrenaline means connection. It just means working hard is your go-to. So yeah, so those are the things that we need to really look at. And when I'm working with people, I actually just completed another certification because I like those. I like to keep going back to the next thing, but it's on the female nervous system. It's a somatic coaching for the female nervous system, which is different than the male nervous system. And what we do is really small, titrated bites of doing something different, because if you make it be too big, people will recoil. They will go like what Libby said. But it's, if you do it in small bites and then give yourself a break, and small bites and give yourself a break, then your nervous system and your body starts to say, oh, I can get this. I can be comfortable with this. And so you might be in two different places. You might be I'm in a relationship. It's been a 30-year relationship. I'm not going to end it. What do I do? And we can go to work with that. Or you might be, I'm not in a relationship and I just don't want the next one to be more of the same. And that's a little bit, I don't know if easier is the right word, but at least you only have yourself to focus on. You've got this blank slate to step into and to create something new and different, which is awesome. But if you're in a relationship, you still can really make it be different, because when you transform yourself without making the other person wrong, without pointing fingers and blaming, but just transforming yourself, there is no option, but the relationship must transform, because the dynamic will be different. I don't know how it'll transform. I don't know what that person's response will be. Very often they'll say, I kind of like what you're having. I want some of that. I want to follow along with you. I see you getting stronger and more certain of yourself. Somebody who is, not greatly rooted in themselves might see that as threatening. And then that's a possibility of, are we going to stay together? But it's very possible to actually transform together just while you work on yourself. So even if you're in a long-term relationship that you want to keep going, and it's important to look at, why do I want to keep it? Is it because I feel safe? Is it because I don't think something else is available? Or is it because I actually love them? So that's a place to dig in on too. But yeah. Is
Well,
there
and I love that because, this is about what we can control. We can't control any other person's response. And, I love the quote that, someone else's opinion of me is none of my business.
any?
And so, if we think about it like that, and it's like, okay, I am on this quest for myself, and I'm trusting that at the end of it, I'm going to be exactly the person I need to be, for myself next, and for those who, I love and who choose to love me. And, and that can look different for everyone. And I just want to point out that, you know, very often, a lot of people we also talk to have say things like, yeah, I've been in therapy, I've been in talk therapy, I've done this, that, or the other. I just still don't feel equipped in this particular area. Even if their therapist says, oh, yeah, this person probably has some narcissistic, like tendencies, they're not necessarily being equipped to know how to transform themselves to be different. It's just an acknowledgement. And then it's like, okay, well, yes, I agree, that's there. However, what do I do about it? And oftentimes they're not getting really great answers. And that's because the answer has to come from within ourselves. And as we transform, you know, and talk therapy is great. I'm not saying anything against it. My point is, it is one tool in the toolkit. It's not the Swiss Army knife of personal growth. There's lots of different methodologies. And so what I would like to just say as we wrap this up, I don't know, Linda, if you have anything else you want to say, but if this is resonating at all with you, we would love to. I believe Linda has a talk on that we could share in the link or share a link to, and we also have calendar links if you want to talk to Linda or me just about, hey, this really resonates. I feel like this is something I want to explore more. This is something I need to understand. Yes, this is me, or maybe this is me. I think I need to have a discussion around that. We would love to chat with you about that. And it's absolutely free. There's no obligation. We just like to hear what you have to say, see if there's something we can do to help you along on the healing journey, and then give some recommendations of some ways we might be able to help. Or if we're not a good fit, then maybe there's some other resources we could share with you that might be, slightly better. But either way, you get a lot of value because you have someone with an outside perspective, sharing their just sharing their expertise. So it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, thanks. I just shared the calendar link because I have that always at the ready. I didn't
Great.
have a link for I have done at different points talks on this topic. So I will find that and go back and post it in the comments. I didn't have
Awesome.
it at my fingertips. So yeah, thanks for that, Libby. What I wanted to say too about talk therapy, because I've done therapy myself a few times in my life. And for me, what I noticed was a missing, and again, talk therapy can be great and can serve wonderful purposes. I think all the modalities have their, strong points or whatever. But what's different about coaching, and particularly the coaching that I do, is that we do address the nervous system, which is not a given in talk therapy, because you can talk all you want about what you're thinking, which is what talk therapy really is, like going over, what did you think? How did that make you feel? But you're talking about the issue, talk, right? But actually changing in the body, because your nervous system does not speak the language of words. Your nervous system does not pay attention to your rewiring of your thoughts. Your nervous system speaks the language of sensations and emotions that are in your body. So you have to learn how to talk to your nervous system in the language that it understands, or the rewiring will not hold when push comes to shove.
And
So
so
that to
is
me,
that almost like, okay, we're talking about, if you read the book Think Fast and Slow, system one, system two, are you or, like, oh, the croc brain versus like the conscious brain. Really what you're talking about, it sounds like, is, with talk therapy, you're doing a lot of the, more conscious side of things, but it's not always addressing that, brainstem, like the feelings, the sensations, the deep emotions that maybe don't have a lot of words to go with them.
exactly. Yep.
Okay. Great. Great.
So,
Awesome.
and I want to just thank Eric, because he's been with us the whole time. He's been chiming in over here. And thank you, Eric, for your comments and for joining the conversation. And for anybody else who's going to watch the replay later, please say hello and where you're from, just because we love to know that. This is streaming in multiple places, so we can't see the comments everywhere. We can only see, where we can see from, but we will go back and look. So I'd love to know. And again, we'll look to answer your comments or your questions if you go ahead and put them there, should you watch this later on. Okay?
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone. And we look forward to talking with you soon about this.
Yes, so much. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.